Hello, and a huge welcome to the channel. If you're looking for cross-dressing stories that are emotional, intriguing, and truly empowering, you've come to the right place. My life, up until that Tuesday, was the color of weak coffee. It was a predictable routine of spreadsheets, lukewarm microwave lunches, and the quiet hum of the server room. I was Kevin, a 25-year-old office drone in a sea of other drones, my most exciting weekly event being the arrival of a new shipment of toner for the communal printer. My existence was a flat line, a beige canvas waiting for a splash of color I didn't know I needed. My one secret, my tiny rebellion against the crushing monotony, was hidden beneath the sensible slacks and polished dress shoes society expected of me. It was a secret made of nylon and spandex, a whisper of silkiness against my skin that no one else could see. It had started with a pair of socks, then graduated to knee-highs, and eventually, on a whim, born of a late-night internet rabbit hole, to full-fledged pantyhose. There was something about the gentle, uniform pressure around my legs, the smooth glide of the fabric, that was strangely comforting. It was a shield, an intimate secret that was mine and mine alone. That Tuesday, I was sitting in my usual booth at The Daily Grind, a coffee shop halfway between my office and my sterile apartment. The place had a warm, lived-in feel, with the scent of roasted beans and cinnamon hanging in the air. I was nursing a black coffee, trying to decompress after a particularly soul-crushing meeting about synergy and deliverables. My legs were crossed under the table, the sheer black nylon of my pantyhose invisible beneath my grey wool trousers. It was my private comfort in a public space. I was scrolling through meaningless news headlines on my phone when a shadow fell over my table. I looked up. It was the waitress, the one I'd noticed before. She was maybe a few years younger than me, with eyes the color of dark honey and a cascade of black hair that fell over one shoulder. She moved with a liquid grace that made every other person in the room seem clumsy and slow. Her name tag, pinned to her black apron, read Mila. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked. Her voice was smooth, lower than I expected, with a playful edge to it. "No, I'm good. Thanks," I mumbled, my default setting for any and all human interaction. She didn't move. She just stood there, her head tilted slightly, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. It was the kind of smile that made you feel like she knew your credit card PIN and your childhood nickname. My stomach did a nervous little flip. "That's an interesting choice," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "My blood ran cold. I'm sorry." Her gaze flicked down toward the table, then back up to my face, under the pants, the pantyhose. I froze. My entire world screeched to a halt. It felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. My face exploded with heat, a deep, painful blush that I was sure was visible from space. This was it, the moment I had always dreaded. The discovery, the humiliation. I imagined her calling the manager, pointing and laughing, the whole coffee shop turning to stare at the freak in the corner booth. My mind raced, trying to formulate a lie, an excuse, anything. It's for circulation. It's a medical thing. It's a dare. Every excuse sounded pathetic and flimsy. I just stared at her, my mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. But she didn't laugh. The smile on her face softened, losing its teasing edge and becoming something else, something intriguing. She leaned in closer, her scent something like vanilla and night-blooming jasmine washing over me. "Don't look so terrified," she murmured, her voice a velvet caress. "I'm not going to out you." She paused, her dark eyes searching mine. And then she delivered the line that would detonate the foundations of my boring, predictable life. "You know," she said, her whisper barely audible over the clatter of cups and the hiss of the espresso machine. "You have great legs for them. I bet you'd look really feminine in other women's things. 2. My panic was instantly replaced by a profound and dizzying confusion. This wasn't ridicule. It wasn't judgment. It was an observation. A compliment. My brain couldn't process it. A beautiful woman had just discovered my deepest, most embarrassing secret and was complimenting me on it. I don't know what you're talking about, I stammered, the denial weak and automatic. Mila straightened up, a small chuckle escaping her lips. It was a lovely sound. It's okay. Kevin, relax. She had read my name off my credit card when I paid earlier. Of course she had. I'm not like other people. I don't see weird. I see potential. Potential. The word felt foreign in my mouth. Potential for what? More public humiliation. You're hiding a part of yourself, she said, her tone suddenly serious. She gestured for me to move over, and before I could object, she slid into the booth opposite me. The intimacy of the act sent another jolt through me. You're dipping your toes into a world you're curious about, but you're scared. You're wearing pantyhose under your work clothes because it feels good. Because it's a secret thrill. Am I wrong? I could only shake my head, mesmerized by her confidence. She saw right through me. It was terrifying and, in a strange way, liberating. To be so completely and totally seen. I find that special. She continued, her voice low and persuasive. I have a hobby. Some people collect stamps. I collect experiences. I like to help people, especially men like you, explore the parts of themselves they keep locked away. You could call me a curator of transformations. She winked. A femme fatale. If you want to be dramatic. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. What? What are you saying? I'm saying you're curious. I can see it in your eyes. You've thought about it, haven't you? What it would feel like to go further, to wear a dress, to put on makeup, to see a different person in the mirror. Every word was a direct hit. I had thought about it, in the privacy of my own mind. Late at night, I had wondered. I'd see a woman walk down the street, the fabric of her skirt swaying around her legs, and a flicker of, not desire, but envy, curiosity. I could never quite name the feeling. It was a locked door in my mind, and Mila had just produced the key. What if we made it a game, she proposed, leaning forward, her elbows on the table. A challenge. No strings attached. Just you and me. I help you explore this side of yourself. See how it feels. If you hate it, we never speak of it again. But if you like it... She let the sentence hang in the air, charged with possibility. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. What do you say? Kevin, do you want to play? I should have said no. The sane, rational Kevin, the one who built his life on avoiding risk and attention, was screaming at me to run, to get up, leave the coffee shop, and never come back. But another part of me, a part I barely knew existed, was captivated. It was the part that was tired of the beige, the part that secretly loved the feel of nylon on his skin. It was the part that looked at Mila, with her knowing eyes and her intoxicating confidence, and felt a thrill of pure, unadulterated excitement. I looked down at the table, at my hands which were trembling slightly. I took a deep breath, the scent of coffee and Mila's perfume filling my senses. Okay, I heard myself say, the word a quiet surrender. Okay, I'll play. A slow, triumphant smile spread across Mila's face. It was the most beautiful and terrifying thing I had ever seen. Excellent, she said, sliding out of the booth. My shift ends in 20 minutes. Meet me out back. She walked away, her hips swaying with a confidence I couldn't even imagine possessing. I watched her go, My coffee completely forgotten. My life was no longer a flat line. A massive, terrifying, exhilarating spike had just appeared on the monitor, and I had no idea where it was heading. 20 minutes later, I was standing in the alley behind the daily grind, feeling like a spy in a bad movie. The air was thick with the smell of garbage and stale coffee grounds. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. What was I doing? This was insane. I was about to follow a woman I'd just met to an unknown location to play dress-up. The rational part of my brain was short-circuiting. The back door creaked open and Mila emerged, now stripped of her work apron. She was wearing a simple black t-shirt and jeans, but she still radiated that same effortless magnetism. "Ready for your adventure?" she asked. Her lips curved in a slight smile. "I think I'm going to be sick," I said honestly. She laughed. "You'll be fine. My car is this way." Her apartment was a 10-minute drive away, in a part of town with older, more stylish buildings and tree-lined streets. The entire ride was a blur of my own anxious thoughts. I was acutely aware of the pantyhose under my trousers, no longer a secret comfort, but the catalyst for this whole surreal situation. Mila's apartment was on the 3rd floor. As she unlocked the door and pushed it open, I was met with a space that was exactly like her chic, a little mysterious, and unapologetically feminine. The walls were a deep teal. The furniture was a mix of vintage and modern pieces, and there were books and art everywhere. It smelled like her. That vanilla and jasmine scent, but richer here, more lived in. "Make yourself at home," she said, tossing her keys into a ceramic bowl on a console table. "Drink. Water would be great," I managed to squeak out. As she went to the kitchen, I stood awkwardly in the middle of her living room, feeling large and out of place in my drab office attire. This was her world, a world of color and texture and confidence. My world was cubicles and grey carpet. She returned with a glass of water. "Okay," she said, setting it down. "First things first. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. And that means we have to start with a blank canvas." "A blank canvas? Your legs," she said, her eyes twinkling. "The pantyhose are nice. But the real feeling, the true experience of silk and nylon against your skin, it's 1,000 times better when it's perfectly smooth. Have you ever waxed before?" I shook my head, my throat suddenly dry. "Well," she said, a mischievous glint in her eye, "there's a first time for everything. Come on." She led me to her bathroom. It was spacious and clean, with a large clawfoot tub and an array of bottles and jars on the counter that might as well have been ancient runes to me. She pulled out a small kit from under the sink. It contained a little pot of wax, some wooden sticks, and a stack of fabric strips. "Okay," she instructed, her tone becoming businesslike. "Pants off. Sit on the edge of the tub." My hands trembled as I undid my belt and unzipped my trousers. It felt incredibly vulnerable. Standing there in my boxer briefs and black pantyhose, I slipped them off, the nylon clinging to my leg hair, and folded them neatly, placing them on the closed toilet lid out of a bizarre sense of propriety. I sat on the cold porcelain edge of the tub, my pale, hairy legs exposed. I'd never been so self-conscious of them in my life. Mila warmed the wax in a small electric heater. "This is going to sting," she said conversationally, as if we were discussing the weather. "The first time is the worst, but I promise you, the result is worth it." She tested the temperature on her wrist, then dipped a wooden stick into the pot, scooping up a glob of warm, honey-colored wax. She knelt in front of me. Her proximity was unnerving, but her focus was so absolute, it was almost clinical. "Just breathe," she said. She smoothly applied the wax to my shin, a warm, strange sensation. Then she pressed a fabric strip firmly over it. She held the skin taut at the base. "Ready." I barely had time to nod before she ripped the strip off in one swift, brutal motion. A jolt of sharp, Fiery pain shot up my leg. I yelped, a pathetic, strangled sound. My eyes watered. Oh my God! I gasped. Mila was already examining the strip, which now looked like a furry caterpillar. "See, it works," she said with satisfaction. She pointed to my shin. A patch of skin, now angry and red, was also impossibly, shockingly smooth. I touched it tentatively. It felt like polished marble. It felt alien. "Wow," I whispered, momentarily forgetting the pain. "I told you," she said, already applying a second patch of wax. For the next 40 minutes, she worked with an efficient, practiced grace. Each rip of the fabric was a fresh shock of pain. But as time went on, a strange rhythm developed. The sting would fade, and I'd be left with another patch of that incredibly smooth skin. I focused on her hands, on the methodical way she worked, trying to mentally detach from the sensation. By the end, both my legs from the ankle to mid-thigh were red, blotchy, and completely hairless. They looked like someone else's legs. "Okay, up," she commanded. "Quick shower, lukewarm water. I'll get some soothing lotion." The spray of the water on my raw skin was a relief. As I washed, my hands glided over my legs. The feeling was indescribable. It was like touching a completely different person. The surface was so uniform, so sleek. When I got out and toweled off, the terry cloth felt different, sliding over my skin without any resistance. Mila was waiting with a bottle of aloe vera lotion. She motioned for me to sit on the tub edge again. She squirted the cool gel into her hands and began to massage it into my legs. This time, her touch wasn't clinical. It was gentle, soothing. The sting began to fade, replaced by a cool, pleasant tingle. Her fingers moved in slow, deliberate circles, and I found myself closing my eyes, just feeling the sensation. "Better?" she asked softly. "Much better," I murmured. "It's weird. In a good way." "It's a foundation," she said. "Now for the architecture." She led me out of the bathroom and into her bedroom. Her closet was open, a treasure trove of colors and fabrics. My own closet was a sad collection of gray, blue, and khaki. Hers was a rainbow. She scanned the racks, her finger tapping her chin thoughtfully. "Let's start simple, but effective," she mused. She pulled out a dress. It was a deep wine-red color, made of a soft, stretchy jersey material. It was a body-conscious dress, what they call a bodycon, with long sleeves and a hem that looked like it would hit just above the knee. "This," she said, handing it to me. "And these." From a drawer, she produced a pair of sheer, nude pantyhose. They felt impossibly delicate in my clumsy hands. "These will feel completely different now," she promised. And for the finishing touch, she reached to the floor of her closet and brought out a pair of shoes. They were simple black pumps, with a slim, elegant heel that looked terrifyingly high. "These are only a 7-centimeter heel, about 3 inches, a good starter pair." She left the room, giving me privacy. I stood there, holding the items. The dress felt soft and heavy. The shoes felt like dangerous, beautiful weapons. My heart was pounding again. But this time it wasn't just fear. It was anticipation. I carefully sat on the edge of her bed and began to put on the pantyhose. She was right. The sensation was completely different on my smooth skin. The fine mesh glided on like a second skin. A seamless, silky layer. There was no snagging, no pulling. It was just pure, smooth sensation from my toes to my waist. The control top hugged my waist. A gentle, secure pressure that felt oddly reassuring. Next, the dress. I pulled it over my head. The fabric was cool and soft, slinking down my body and clinging to every contour. I was so used to baggy shirts and loose trousers. This was the opposite. I could feel it against my chest, my stomach, my hips. I stood up and dared to look in the full-length mirror on her closet door. The person staring back was a bizarre stranger. It was me. But not. The dress hugged my frame, hinting at a shape I didn't know I had. My shoulders looked a bit broad, but the way the fabric draped softened them. My waist, cinched by the pantyhose, looked narrower. And my legs were the biggest shock. Clad in the sheer nude hose, they looked longer, leaner, the muscles defined in a way I'd never seen before. They looked elegant. Finally, the shoes. I sat down and slipped my feet into them. They were snug. I stood up slowly, wobbling like a newborn foal. My entire center of gravity shifted. I was taller, my posture forced upright, my back arched. I took a tentative step, then another. It was awkward, precarious, but it also made me feel powerful. The slight click of the heel on the hardwood floor was a satisfying sound. I stood in front of the mirror, turning slowly, taking in the whole picture. The red dress, the sheer hose, the black heels. The man in the mirror was gone, replaced by this strange, androgynous figure. I felt a wave of shame and embarrassment wash over me. This was wrong. This was weird. I was a man in a dress. But then another feeling bubbled up underneath it. A thrill, a deep, undeniable current of excitement. I liked the way the dress felt. I liked the way my legs looked. I saw the reflection not as Kevin in a dress, but as a new creation, an alternate version of myself. The door opened softly. Mila leaned against the frame, a genuine, appreciative smile on her face. She looked me up and down, her gaze lingering on my legs. "Wow," she said, her voice soft with admiration. I was right. She walked over to me, her own movements fluid and graceful. I felt like a clunky statue next to her. She gently ran her hand down my arm, over the soft fabric of the dress. Then she knelt, her fingers tracing the line of my calf, from my knee down to my ankle. My skin tingled at her touch, even through the nylon. "See," she whispered, looking up at me. These legs were made for nylons, absolutely made for it. Her words, her touch, her validating smile, they washed away the last of my shame. In its place, a warm glow of pleasure started to spread through my chest. I looked back at the mirror, at the stranger in the red dress, and for the first time, I smiled. That first night was a turning point. It was like a switch had been flipped in the dark, dusty basement of my mind. I went home from Mila's apartment in a daze, my own male clothes feeling stiff and foreign against my skin. The memory of the smooth nylon, the cling of the dress, the empowering click of the heels, it all replayed in my head on a loop. My smooth legs felt amazing under my bedsheets. It was a secret I now carried not just under my clothes, but on my very skin. The next day at work was torture. The beige walls of my cubicle seemed more oppressive than ever. The drone of office chatter felt like white noise. All I could think about was the feeling of transformation. During a boring quarterly review, I found myself zoning out, imagining the soft whisper of a silk skirt against my legs instead of the coarse wool of my trousers. I'd catch my reflection in the dark screen of my monitor and be disappointed to see plain old Kevin staring back. I started seeing Mila regularly. Our game became a routine. 2 or 3 evenings a week, I would go to her apartment, and she would become my guide, my mentor in this strange new world. She called these our lessons. She taught me how to move. "No, no," she'd say, laughing, as I stomped around her living room in a pair of stilettos. "You're walking like you're trying to put out a fire. It's not about force, it's about grace. Think of your hips as a pendulum. Let them swing. Heel, toe. Heel, toe. Let the shoes do the work." We'd spend hours just walking back and forth across her hardwood floor. She'd put on music, something with a slow, steady beat, and I'd practice. At first, I felt ridiculous, like a clumsy robot. But Mila was patient. She'd walk beside me. Her own movements a perfect example of the fluid grace I was trying to achieve. Slowly, painstakingly, I started to get it. I learned to let my hips sway naturally, to take smaller, more deliberate steps. The awkward clumping softened into a more confident, rhythmic click. She taught me how to sit, how to stand, how to carry myself. Cross your legs at the ankle, not the knee. It's more elegant. She'd advise. When you stand, put your weight on one foot. Pop the other hip out slightly. It creates a more feminine S-curve. These were small things, tiny adjustments, but they made a world of difference. When I looked in the mirror, I saw my posture changing, my silhouette becoming softer, more curved. Then came the lessons on voice. My voice was typically a low, unremarkable monotone. Mila made me record myself speaking, and I was horrified by how gruff I sounded. It's not about faking a high-pitched voice. She explained, that sounds ridiculous. It's about changing your inflection, your cadence. Speak a little softer, a little slower. End your sentences with a slight upward tilt instead of a downward thud. Think musical, not macho. We would practice reading passages from magazines. I'd try to mimic her softer, more melodic tone. Try this, she'd say. The new spring collection features vibrant florals and flowing silks. I'd repeat it, my voice cracking with the effort. The new spring collection. It felt absurd, but I kept at it. I started practicing in my car on the way to work, quietly speaking to myself, trying to find that softer register. I was becoming addicted to the process, to the meticulous crafting of this new persona. The addiction wasn't just mental, it was sensory. I became obsessed with the textures and scents of femininity. Mila introduced me to her wardrobe, and I was a kid in a candy store. I discovered the cool, liquid feel of a silk blouse against my skin, the gentle hug of a cashmere sweater, the playful swish of a pleated skirt around my newly smooth legs. I fell in love with the smell of her perfume, a complex blend of vanilla and jasmine that I started to associate with this burgeoning identity. She bought me my own bottle. I'd spray a little on my wrists before bed, inhaling the sweet, intoxicating scent as I fell asleep. She started calling me by a different name during our sessions. One evening, as I was modeling a new outfit for her, a chic black pencil skirt and a cream-colored silk top, she was looking at me with an intense, appraising expression. Kevin doesn't fit anymore. Does he? She said softly. When you're like this, you're someone else. You need a name. She thought for a moment, her finger tapping her lip. Michelle, she said finally. It's classic, elegant. It suits you. Michelle. I tried the name out in my head. It felt right. It felt like the name of the person I saw in the mirror. The person who could walk in heels and wear a silk blouse. I like it, I said, and the voice that came out was softer, higher than usual. It was Michelle's voice. Mila smiled. Hello, Michelle. The culmination of all these lessons, the final piece of the puzzle, was makeup. I was terrified of it. It seemed like a mysterious, complicated art form. But Mila, as always, was a patient and meticulous teacher. She sat me down in front of her vanity mirror, the surface surrounded by bright, warm bulbs. The array of powders, pencils, and brushes was daunting. Don't worry, she said, her hands gently turning my face toward the light. We'll start with the basics. The goal isn't to look like a clown. It's to enhance what's already there, to soften the angles and highlight your best features. She started with a primer, a cool gel that made my skin feel incredibly smooth. Then came the foundation, applied with a damp sponge in a series of gentle dabbing motions. It evened out my skin texture, hiding the slight redness left over from my shaving. I'd graduated from waxing to daily shaving for upkeep. Next, a light dusting of translucent powder that tickled my nose. Now for the eyes, she murmured, her face close to mine. I could feel her warm breath on my cheek. They're your best feature. We want to make them pop. She used a soft brown eyeshadow to add depth to the crease, then a thin, precise line of black liquid eyeliner along my upper lash line. This was the hardest part for me. I couldn't stop my eyelids from fluttering. Hold still. Michelle, she chided gently. Her hand was steady as a rock. The tiny brush tickled my lashes. When she was done, the thin black line made my eyes look wider, more defined. Then came the eyelash curler, a terrifying-looking metal contraption. I flinched as she brought it toward my eye. But she was gentle, a soft squeeze, and my lashes were suddenly lifted. She followed it with 2 coats of black mascara. Look, she said, holding up a small hand mirror. I stared at my own eye. It looked bigger, brighter, and undeniably feminine. The long, dark, curled lashes were a revelation. It was my eye, but a prettier, more alluring version of it. She finished with a soft blush on the apples of my cheeks and, finally, the lipstick. She chose a subtle shade of dusty rose. The feel of the creamy lipstick gliding over my lips was a strange, sensual experience. The look was complete. She turned my chair back toward the large vanity mirror. I held my breath. The person staring back at me was not Kevin. It wasn't even the androgynous figure I'd seen before. This was someone new. The makeup had softened the masculine angles of my face. My jawline looked less sharp, my cheekbones more defined. My eyes, framed by the liner and mascara, were large and expressive. My lips looked fuller, softer. It was my face, but rearranged, reinterpreted. I was pretty. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I was pretty. I reached up and tentatively touched my cheek. The face in the mirror did the same. I couldn't believe it. A slow, dizzying wave of euphoria washed over me. This was the ultimate transformation. Mila was watching me in the mirror, a proud, satisfied smile on her face. She came up behind me, placing her hands on my shoulders. See? She whispered in my ear. I told you I saw potential. She leaned in closer, her lips brushing against my earlobe. The room suddenly felt very warm. My heart started to hammer in my chest, a frantic rhythm that I was now coming to associate with her. You look so lovely. Michelle, she murmured, her voice a husky purr. She looked at our reflection in the mirror me. This new feminine creature. And her, the beautiful, powerful creator. You look so good. You could be my girlfriend. Her words hung in the air between us. It was a joke, but it didn't feel like one. It felt like a proposition, an escalation of our game into something deeper, something more real. I looked at our reflection. I saw Michelle, her eyes wide, her lips slightly parted. She looked flustered, but also intrigued. My heart was a chaotic drum solo in my chest. I felt a blush rise on my carefully made-up cheeks. I looked at Mila's reflection, at her smirking, questioning eyes. I should have laughed it off, made a self-deprecating joke. But I couldn't. The idea, as shocking as it was, sent a forbidden thrill right through me. To be her girlfriend, to be Michelle. With her, I didn't say anything. I just kept staring at our reflection. my pulse thundering in my ears, and in the silence, I knew I hadn't refused. The idea of being Mila's girlfriend, even in a role-playing sense, had rewired my brain. Our sessions took on a new layer of intensity. The line between Kevin and Michelle was becoming blurrier with each passing day. At work, I was a ghost, going through the motions. At home, in the evenings with Mila, I felt more alive than ever. I was Michelle. One Thursday evening, after we had perfected a smoky eye look, and I was dressed in a sleek navy blue wrap dress that made me feel incredibly sophisticated, Mila dropped the bombshell. "I think you're ready," she said, circling me like a general inspecting her prize soldier. Ready for what I asked, adjusting the delicate silver necklace she'd just clasped around my neck. My voice was soft, practiced. Michelle's voice. "The final exam," she said, a wicked glint in her eyes. "We're going out." The blood drained from my face. Out. Out where like. Outside. That's usually where out is. "Yes," she teased. "Don't look so panicked. You're ready. You look amazing. You walk. You talk. You carry yourself like a woman. No one will ever know." But what if they do? The fear was a cold, constricting band around my chest. My apartment and Mila's were safe havens, controlled environments. The outside world was unpredictable, filled with strangers and judgment. What if someone from my work sees me? What if someone recognizes me? They'll laugh. They'll take pictures. Mila came over and took my hands in hers. Her hands were warm and steady. "Michelle, listen to me. No one is looking for Kevin, the office worker. They will see a woman, out for a drink with her friend. You have to own it. Confidence is the best camouflage you can wear. If you believe you are Michelle, they will believe it too." Her confidence was infectious, but I was still terrified. My carefully constructed world felt like it was made of glass, and she was asking me to take a hammer to it. "I don't know. Mila!" "I'm not asking," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. But then it softened. "I'm challenging you. This is the whole point of our game, isn't it? To see how far you can go, to really live it for a few hours. I'll be with you the entire time. I won't let anything happen to you." I looked at my reflection in the dark window. Michelle stared back, her expression a mixture of terror and longing. She wanted to go. She was tired of being confined to these four walls. It was Kevin who was scared. "Okay," I breathed. "Okay. I'll do it." "Excellent." Mila's face broke into a grin. "But wait, we're forgetting the most important part. The final layer." She went to her dresser and opened a drawer that I had never looked in before. It was filled with lace and silk in a rainbow of colors. It was her lingerie drawer. My mouth went dry. She pulled out two items. The first was a bra, a lacy black thing with delicate straps and what looked like significant padding. The second was a tiny scrap of black lace and string, a G-string. "Every woman has her secrets," Mila said, handing them to me. "This is the foundation. It's what makes you feel female from the inside out, even when no one else can see it. Go on. Put them on." She turned around to give me privacy. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unhook the back of my dress. I slipped it off my shoulders, letting it pool around my waist. Standing topless in front of her mirror, I looked undeniably male. I picked up the bra. It was a foreign object, an engineering marvel I couldn't comprehend. I fumbled with it, eventually figuring out how to get my arms through the straps. The cups felt strange against my flat chest. Reaching behind my back to fasten the tiny hooks and eyes was a feat of gymnastics that left me breathless and frustrated. Finally, it clicked into place. The band was snug around my ribs. I looked in the mirror. The padding in the cups pushed my chest tissue together, creating the illusion of a small, but definite. Cleavage under the lace. It was startling. It was a lie, but it was a convincing one. Next, the G-string. I stepped out of my simple cotton briefs and into the scrap of lace. The feeling was shocking. I was used to the full coverage of boxers or briefs. This was the opposite. A tiny triangle of lace in the front, and a single string that settled between my... well, it was a sensation I had never experienced before. It was instantly exposing. Barely there. And yet, profoundly, secretly feminine. It was both embarrassing and intensely arousing. I pulled my dress back up and adjusted it. From the outside, nothing looked different, except for the subtle, soft curve of a bust line I didn't actually possess. But underneath, I felt completely transformed. I was wearing a padded bra and a G-string. The secret was so deep, so intimate. It was almost overwhelming. "Ready?" Mila asked, turning back around. I just nodded, unable to speak. We decided on a quiet, upscale lounge downtown. Dim lighting, soft jazz, expensive cocktails, a place where people were more interested in their own conversations than in scrutinizing strangers. The taxi ride there was the longest 10 minutes of my life. I sat rigidly, my hands clasped in my lap, my new clutch purse feeling like a foreign object. I was acutely aware of everything: the feel of the lacy bra against my chest, the unfamiliar sensation of the G-string, the way my dress felt against the leather seat. Mila kept up a stream of light chatter, her hand resting reassuringly on my knee. "You look beautiful. By the way," she whispered as we pulled up to the curb. "Just breathe. And remember, you're Michelle." Walking from the cab to the door of the lounge was a terrifying gauntlet. The click-clack of my heels on the pavement sounded like gunshots in the quiet night. I felt like every person on the street was staring, their eyes burning into me. I kept my gaze fixed on the ground in front of me, focusing on Mila's instruction heel. Toe, heel, toe. Mila, sensing my panic, slipped her arm through mine. "Chin up," she murmured. "You're with me." We walked inside. The lounge was just as she'd described: dark, intimate, and sophisticated. A host, a handsome man in a sharp suit, smiled at us. "Good evening, ladies," he said. "A table for two." Ladies. The word hit me like a jolt of electricity. He saw us as two women. He didn't look twice. He didn't see a man in a dress. He saw Michelle. A wave of relief so powerful it almost made my knees buckle washed over me. He led us to a secluded booth in the back. As I slid across the velvet seat, I felt a surge of exhilaration. I did it. I was here. And no one knew. The fear began to recede, replaced by a giddy, intoxicating excitement. This was real. Mila ordered us cocktails. When the waiter came, he addressed me as ma'am. I managed a small smile and a quiet thank you. Each small interaction was a victory, a confirmation of my disguise. I started to relax, to inhabit the persona of Michelle more fully. I copied Mila, crossing my legs at the ankle, taking small, delicate sips of my drink. We talked. We laughed. I found myself gesturing with my hands more, my voice staying in that softer, higher register without me even having to think about it. For 2 hours. I was a woman. I was treated like a woman. I felt like a woman. It was the most liberating, arousing, and profoundly transformative experience of my life. The secret knowledge of the lace bra and G-string beneath my elegant dress was a constant, thrilling hum beneath the surface of it all. On the walk back to her apartment, the cool night air felt wonderful against my skin. The city lights seemed brighter, more magical. I was high on the experience. Mila was quiet, but she had a proud smile on her face. As we waited at a crosswalk, she leaned her head against my shoulder. The gesture was so natural, so intimate. So she said softly, her voice a warm murmur against my ear. Was it worth the terror? I looked down at her dark hair illuminated by the streetlights. It was, I said, my voice full of genuine emotion. It was more than worth it. She smiled and her hand, which had been resting on my arm, slid down. Her fingers brushed against my hip, then moved to my thigh. Her touch a light, feathery pressure on the thin fabric of my dress. The sensation shot straight through me. "Did you like it?" she asked, her voice a low, playful purr. Her eyes, looking up at me, were dark and full of meaning. "Did you like being a girl for a night?" Michelle. Her fingers traced a slow, lazy circle on my thigh, right over the spot where my leg met the delicate lace of my hidden lingerie. My breath hitched. My heart, which had just started to calm down, kicked into overdrive. I looked at her, at this incredible woman who had unlocked a part of me I never knew existed, her touch sending fire through my veins. "Yes," I whispered. The answer coming not from my head, but from some deeper, more honest place. I loved it. Her smile widened, a slow, rascally curve. "I know," she said, and she left her hand right there, on my thigh, for the rest of the walk home. The walk back to Mila's apartment was a dreamlike haze. Her hand on my thigh was a constant, warm pressure, a branding iron of intimacy that seared through the thin material of my dress. Every step felt charged, every shared glance electric. When we got back to her apartment, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken energy. I should probably get changed," I said, my voice sounding weak to my own ears. The thought of taking off the dress, the makeup, the lingerie, the thought of shedding Michelle felt like a betrayal. "There's no rush," Mila said softly. She moved past me into the living room, her movements as fluid as ever. She kicked off her own heels with a sigh of relief and sank onto the sofa, curling her legs up underneath her. She looked at me, still standing awkwardly by the door, a silent invitation in her eyes. I walked over and sat on the opposite end of the sofa, my posture still rigidly perfect, my knees pressed together. I felt like a guest in my own skin. "You were amazing tonight." "Michelle," she said, "truly. You were more than just a man in a dress. You were her." I could see it. I felt like her. I admitted, looking down at my hands, which were clutching my purse in my lap. It was easier than I thought it would be. Once I got past the fear. "The fear is just a wall," she said, "and you climbed right over it." We sat in a comfortable silence for a few minutes, the only sound at the distant hum of city traffic. I finally got up the courage to go to her bedroom to change. I stood in front of the full-length mirror, the same mirror where I had first seen this transformation begin. I looked at Michelle one last time. The sophisticated dress, the perfectly applied makeup, the subtle hint of a bust line. This person looked happy, confident, alive. I slowly unzipped the dress, letting it fall to the floor. Then I went into the bathroom to deal with the makeup. Wiping away the eyeliner and mascara felt like erasing a masterpiece. The foundation came off, revealing my paler, more uneven skin tone. The lipstick disappeared, leaving my own thin lips behind. With each wipe of the cotton pad, Michelle faded, and Kevin, with his tired eyes and his 5 o'clock shadow starting to poke through, re-emerged. The sight of him in the mirror was a disappointment. He looked so bland, so ordinary. I took off the bra, the sudden lack of pressure feeling like a loss. I folded it carefully and placed it on her dresser. I hesitated before taking off the G-string. It was the last piece of the illusion, the most intimate secret. Reluctantly, I slipped it off and put on my own clothes. The stiff fabric of my jeans and t-shirt felt abrasive and confining. The boxer briefs felt bulky and graceless. When I came out, I felt like an imposter. I was back in my Kevin costume. Mila looked up at me. Her expression was unreadable. "There you are," she said, but her tone lacked the enthusiasm she'd had for Michelle. The taxi ride home was quiet. The magic of the night had evaporated, leaving behind a strange melancholy. When I got back to my own apartment, the silence was deafening. I walked into my bedroom and looked at my reflection in my own closet mirror. There he was. Kevin. The guy who analyzed spreadsheets and ate sad desk lunches. He looked lost. Defeated. I looked at my closet, at the rows of boring button-down shirts and sensible slacks. They looked like a uniform for a life I no longer wanted to lead. On a whim, I went into my bathroom and looked at my legs. They were still perfectly smooth. I ran my hand up my calf, and for a second, I could almost feel the phantom sensation of sheer nylon. The memory was so vivid, so powerful. I couldn't stand it. I went back into my bedroom and pulled out the secret box I kept hidden in the back of my closet. Inside was the collection I had started to build since meeting Mila. A few pairs of nice pantyhose, the wine-red dress from our first session, and the pair of starter heels. I hadn't dared to wear them here, in my own space. It felt like crossing a final boundary. But tonight was different. I couldn't go to bed as Kevin. Not after being Michelle. I stripped off my male clothes, tossing them onto a chair with a feeling of disdain. I carefully pulled on a pair of black 20 denier pantyhose, the silky fabric a welcome and familiar caress against my smooth skin. Then, I slipped the red dress over my head. It clung to me, a second skin that felt more honest than my own. Finally, I buckled the straps on the 3-inch heels. I stood in front of my mirror. Michelle was back, albeit a less polished version without the makeup or the miracle bra. But she was there, the silhouette was there, the feeling was there. I spent the next hour just being her in my apartment. I walked from the bedroom to the living room, practicing my stride on my own carpet, the heels sinking in slightly. I put on music and just moved, feeling the fabric of the dress swish around me. I sat on my sofa, crossing my legs elegantly, and imagined I was back in that sophisticated lounge. A feeling of peace settled over me. This felt right. This felt more like me than the man who had left the apartment that morning. The lines were no longer blurry. They had been redrawn entirely. Kevin felt like the performance, the disguise I wore for the world. Michelle felt like the authentic self I had been hiding my whole life without even knowing it. The fear was gone, replaced by a quiet certainty. I didn't want this to be a game anymore. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I walked over, my movements fluid, and picked it up. It was a message from Mila. My heart did a little flip. I opened it. The message was short, but it landed with the force of a tectonic plate shifting beneath my feet. It read, "Tonight was more than just a test, it was a preview. I have a proposition for you, but it's not for Kevin, it's for Michelle." I stared at the words, my breath caught in my throat. I typed back a single, trembling question mark. A moment later, she replied, "I've seen how happy you are as her, how alive. What if you didn't have to switch back? What if Michelle wasn't just for a few nights a week? I have the resources. I have the connections. I can help you with everything documents. Voice therapy, hormones. Everything you would need. I can help you make the change permanent." A new message appeared before I could even process the last one. So that's my proposition. The ultimate transformation. Do you want to be Michelle for good? I let the phone slip from my fingers onto the sofa. I stood up and walked back to the full-length mirror. My mind a whirlwind of shock and hope and terror and elation. I looked at my reflection, at Michelle. She was staring back at me, her expression unreadable. For good. To leave Kevin behind entirely, to pack him away like an old set of clothes and never wear him again. To step out into the world every single day as this person. To become the woman in the mirror. Completely and irrevocably. It was the most terrifying thought I had ever had. And the most tempting. I thought of my beige life, my quiet desperation, the constant feeling of being a square peg in a round hole. Then I thought of the last few weeks, the thrill of the transformation, the joy of new sensations, the confidence, the laughter, the feeling of being truly seen, the feeling of Mila's hand on my thigh. A slow smile spread across my face. It wasn't a hesitant, shy smile. It was a genuine, confident, knowing smile. It was Michelle's smile. I looked at her, at me, in the mirror. The question hung in the air. A shimmering portal to a new and unknown future. Did I want to be Michelle for good? I knew my answer. The real question was I brave enough to type it? I turned from the mirror and walked back toward the soft glow of my phone, my heels clicking softly, decisively, on the floor of my new life.